Thank you very much for staying. This is the Marketplace, and you're welcome back once again. Now to the very first story. Industries say their operations are yet to improve despite marginal stability in the energy crisis. Most firms blame their poor performance last year to the power crisis. However, a lot of analysts were expecting things to improve slightly following the current stability with power supply. But Vice President of the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, Humphrey Dake, says they are struggling because current environment has not improved.
Considering the 2012, 13, 14 difficulties, that is the exchange rate difficulty that came through the Bank of Ghana directive, then we went into DUMSO, that is power crisis. Then we had a difficulty in there were major landmark issues that were the constraint to growth. So beyond that, in 2016, though we have some reasonable stability of power, now the element is cost of power. Cost of power is extremely expensive, and therefore it's rendering most industries non-competitive. And within the 3-4 year period of difficulty, most industries contrasted. And definitely it's going to take them time to re-engineer their system and grow and capture their markets as they lost in the previous issues. So these are processes, and therefore it needs time to recall.
That was the Vice President of the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, Humphrey Dake. Moving on, the level of non-performing loans is rising despite decision by government to clear a fraction of the energy sector debts. This was outlined in the third quarter report by some listed banks. Now, banking analyst and economist Patrick Stevenson has been sharing his thoughts. He spoke on Business Live last night.
Well, significantly, I mean, if you look at the indicators that goes into the determination of the cost of borrowing, I mean, you have things like default risk that have to be taken into consideration. You have what the going monetary rate risk, which is equally filtered into the base rate of the bank. You equally have a concern regarding liquidity risk as well, but ultimately, the decision comes to demand and supply of funds. What are the total volume of funds that are available, and what's the demand for these funds? And so in a case where these monies are not being unlocked from the government side through any sort of arrangement, clearly there's a supply constriction on funds. If you have to balance that against the ever-increasing demand for finance by SMEs and businesses within the economy, clearly a pressure is placed on the lending rate. And so to directly correlate with the pressures you have seen in the non-performing loan ratios of banks, if you look at the trends we have in the lending rate as well, the average lending rate that has been reported by the Bank of Ghana has also consistently increased. Currently it sits around 33.2%. And that clearly is an indication that cost of credit has gone up for both businesses and even for government itself, because if you look at the government's own issues, the 680 that is issued over the last 3 quarters, the short-term instruments, i.e. the 91 bills, have had lower rates.
All right, so this particular development is very, very worrying to some banks, especially those who have been listed, because it is threatening their very existence. Now, joining me here in the studio, research analyst Bertha Atubiga from Gold Coast Fund Management to do some more analysis on non-performing loans and how they are impacting the market as the stock market. Bertha, good afternoon, welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, Emmanuel.
Now, how serious is it? You have been studying the markets. How really important is this non-performing loans to the market performance in general?
Okay, thank you very much. And non-performing loans is one thing that is very critical, especially in our markets where we have more financial equities as compared to other equities that form the various sectors in the stock market. Now, you look at the last financials, that the third quarter financials that has been released by these banks that are listed on the stock market, and you realize that I think apart from GCB that had its NPL maintained at 12.3%, most other banks had their NPL still rising. And as of July 2016, the average NPL ratio for all the banks in Ghana was around 19.1%. Okay, and if your NPL is rising, what it means is that your capital, definitely your capital adequacy ratio is going to be affected. And we're looking at the capital
adequacy ratio, what is it?
When we talk about the capital adequacy ratio, we're looking at the measure of the bank's capital.
Okay.
So if your capital, that is your funds, is not enough, definitely it will affect your liquidity ratio. Because the rate at which you give out loans, the money that you have depends on how much you have in your capital reserves. Okay. Sure. So if the NPLs are rising, then it means that it's going to have an impact, negative impact on your capital adequacy ratio, like I earlier mentioned. And one other thing too is that when NPLs are rising, it also affects the bank's bottom lines. That is their profit after tax for that particular period. And now you look at most of the banks, though some have recorded some profits, but if you compare it to year-on-year basis, comparing 2015 to this year, you realize that some of them have made losses or the appreciation or increment was very marginal. And when your bottom lines are affected, it also actually deters investors or reduces investors' confidence in your equity.
How do they eventually affect the existence of the bank? How do they threaten the bank's existence? Because we hear, you know,
the banks, yes, the banks, yes, the banks are exposed to a lot of risks. And when your NPLs are rising and it affects your capital adequacy ratio, we have market risks. That one you can't avoid, but you can curtail it or reduce it. Let me use a non-bank equity on the stock market, that's FML. During the times where the energy crisis was very intense, the cedi was depreciating, at the end of that financial year, FML still managed to make profits because the management did not focus only on the Ghanaian market, but they had other alternative or strategies that made them penetrate through other markets and used it to make profits in the times where the economy was not stable.
All right, so how are these, or this situation affecting the performance of the financial equities? I mean, are investors threatened?
Investors are threatened, not threatened per se, but let me say investor confidence is going down gradually. And if you look at the financial equities on the stock market and you compare the average yield or the year-to-date returns of these financial equities to the broader market, that's even the composite index, which looks at the entire market, realize that the financial stock index is lagging behind the composite index. And one driver of the stock exchange, that's the Ghana Stock Exchange, is the financial equities or the financial sector, the banking and finance equities. And if the main driver of the markets is not doing well, averagely, you can imagine the impact that it is having on the entire market. Now, let's just take some few equities out from the financial. You look at CAL, you look at ETI, for instance, you look at SCB, Standard Chartered Bank, you look at GCB, and you look at the weight, especially ETI, Standard Chartered Bank. ETI is worth over $2.3 billion Ghana cedis on the stock market. Now, a single drop in ETI or an additional gain in ETI affects the entire market because of its weight on the exchange. SCB too, same. And you look at all the sectors that we have on the exchange. When you look at all the sectors, the sector that comprises the lot or the most equities is the financial sector. And I can give you the update. As at last week, close of Friday last week, where we measure the year open prices and then the current prices of these equities on the market. CAL has lost 15% this year. It began the year at 1 cedi and is now trading at 85 pesos per share. That was Friday, as of Friday. And then you look at ETI, like I said, it's worth 2.3 billion Ghana cedis, and it has lost 59.26%.
That is EcoBank
Transnational Incorporated. It has lost 59.26% of its share price. So
are these the banks that have been listed or that have been
these are banks that are listed on the exchange.
That have been identified as problematic in relation to the NPLs, right?
Well, if we say most of them, most of the banks are recording high NPLs currently on the market, and that one, it's the industry average is there, and then the banking, most of them also have their NPLs below the industry average.
So what should investors be doing now? Should they hold their shares? Should they sell? Should they buy more shares?
Let me say some of the equities is a hold, some of them is a buy, and some you don't sell. We don't sell when prices are not doing very well. For instance, EcoBank Ghana. EcoBank Ghana is a buy equity now. Why am I saying it's a buy? You look at their financials, it's very strong. Their fundamentals are very strong. But you look at the NPL, which is very high, and their credit losses are also very high. So it means that they've lost a lot. They've not been able to recover some of the loans that they gave out.
Exactly.
So when it happens like this, then you look at the future prospects of the company.
So apart from folding up, what are some of the other options that these banks, these ailing banks, so to speak, have?
Some of the banks are also closing down some branches to reduce or to cut down costs, and some branches or some banks are also taking strategic measures, knowing who to give out their loans out to. You don't give out loans to anybody at all because NPLs are high. It's a general problem with the banking institution or the banking sector. So you don't just give out loans. You have to do a lot of background checks before you give out the loans, even to companies. You have to do very good due diligence before you give out the loans to them. So these are some of the things that they can do. So not only folding up, but they'll be very strategic in giving out loans because the general economy is not very stable and people are not able to pay back the loans because cost of doing everything has actually gone up. Business, even personal stuff, your surplus income has also reduced, and it makes it difficult for them to pay back the loans. So one strategic thing is to know the kind of people that you give out the loans to. You should be very strategic, yes. And it is the best because if you don't do that, you might end up collapsing the bank. If you want to have pity, now let me use a typical example, EcoBank Ghana. During their AGM, the company had released a very impressive second quarter financials. And when they went for the AGM, the CFO mentioned that despite the fact that NPLs are on the rise, they are still ready. They will still give out loans to their cherished clients. And that statement affected their share performance on the stock markets. We saw the price of EcoBank dropping like almost every time because of that statement that was made. So investors are very cautious because if you are going to give out the loans to them and they are unable to pay back, then your NPL rises, your bottom lines are affected, and in the long run, it might, at the end of the year, you're not able to make profit. It means investors should not expect, or shareholders should not expect dividends. And that's one thing that they also look out for, dividends and capital gains.
Thank you for that analysis. But before you go, can you give us any financials on the stock markets today, I mean, since yesterday and today?
Okay, the market has not closed yet today. Yesterday, we didn't see any equity moving on their share prices, so the major indices were still at the same levels. And the market didn't actually close early yesterday, and we didn't see any price change. All the equities that traded at their previous share quotes. So we are hoping to see if we see any changes in prices, but we shouldn't expect lots of changes, just a few of them.
Thank you very much, Bertha, for that update, and I hope to see you again on Friday for Business Live.
Thank you.
All right, so Bertha Atubiga is the research analyst from Gold Coast Fund Management. She's been taking us through the level of non-performing loans and its impact on the Ghana Stock Exchange. It's still on the marketplace. Moving on, Total Petroleum Ghana has welcomed plans by the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, to implement a new fuel quality policy from next year. Speaking to Joy Business at the launch of the company's new promotion, Managing Director of Total Petroleum, Oliver Van Paris, hinted they are ready to work with the new regulation at no cost to the consumer.
The move by the downstream petroleum regulator, the NPA, is to reduce the sulfur content in fuels imported into the country following concerns over the associated health hazards of the substance. This emanated from concerns by European Agency and the African Center for Energy Policy of high sulfur content in Ghana's fuels. Total says it is ready to adapt at no cost.
We need to be happy because it's a very good news that diesel coming in the market, and I think it's exactly the role we are expecting NPA to play. It's to permanently ensure that NA has got the last specification for its product. Started our discussion by saying that for Total, the most important point is the quality of product, the quality of services. So the best we can get in the Ghanaian market, the more happy we are. So yes, we are completely ready. It will probably not affect our prices. You know, it depends, as NPA has explained.
The company was launching its new promotion dubbed Total Wazoye, which aims to reward its loyal customers for the festive season. Managing Director of Total Petroleum, Oliver Van Paris Van Paz, spoke with Joy Business after the launch.
The Ghanaian market is a very competitive market. We have, it means you need to be at the top of your game every day. So part of our strategy was to renovate completely today part of our strategy is to animate our service station and to reward our customers, to propose to them attractive prices because they are loyal to us, they trust the brand. As I said before, 100,000 customers are visiting every day Total Ghana service station. So it is something to have when you have on a daily basis more than 100,000 customers coming to you. It's important once a year to be able to reward them and to be able to offer them something for their loyalty.
Oliver Van Paris is the Managing Director of Total Petroleum Ghana.
You're live on the marketplace. We're taking a short break here. We'll be back with more. Welcome back and thanks for staying on the marketplace. Now, over 100 million Americans are casting their votes in the country's general elections that have been described as historic. But here in Ghana, the concern is whether developments in the biggest economy in the world could have a significant impact on the economy as well as other African countries or economies. Now, George Riafe is here with me to do some analysis on the real impact of the elections on Ghana and Africa as well. George, good afternoon.
Interesting one.
Yes.
When America sneezes, the rest catches
exactly.
the cold.
But why do you think that this election is so historic?
Well, if Hillary wins, America will produce as first a female president. If Donald Trump wins, you're also going to see one of the few times where an entrepreneur, a real estate billionaire, has risen through the ranks, broken through the political establishment to become the president of the U.S. And even the number of people who are also casting their votes, and that is why it's been described as historic, whichever way you want to look at it.
But George, when Obama stood, it was also historic.
Because that was the first. So
exactly.
History maybe by repeating itself, depending not because of a black person, but the fact that interesting things might happen when the polls close by midnight today in US. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, why do you think African economies should be concerned about these developments going on?
America plays a significant role in the world economy when it comes to the appointment of a World Bank president, the appointment of IMF president, or the IMF managing director. So most of these institutions, IMF more to the Europe and World Bank is for the US. So depending on whoever leads or walks to the Oval Office that is in the White House, they will shape world policies and world economies. Even before the letter came out, or when the letter came out that the FBI was investigating Hillary, you saw world markets dropping.
Sure.
When they announced that they are stopping their investigations or there is nothing new there to push ahead to prosecute Hillary, the market picked up. So you see that most of the markets around the world are pro or think that more of a pro-Hillary. Don't forget that. Really? Why should we care about developments there? Because anything that happens in U.S., the Ghanaian bonds are now trading on several international markets out there. Okay. There are a lot of institutional investors that are based in the U.S. that also trade in Ghana bonds and our Euro bonds. So if there's any sign of uncertainty, because that is what analysts who are also following Donald Trump presidency are worried about. Even though when I engaged one U.S. state official here in Ghana, his argument was that in terms of major policies like maybe the Power for Africa, which we've seen the MCC Compact 2 Ghana is benefiting from, we won't see any drastic change. Okay. But the fact that even though Trump has gone out to outline his policy for you, there is still some high level uncertainty.
So you think a Trump presidency will not to the benefits of Ghana?
Indirectly, there's so much uncertainty about the economy. There are a lot of Ghanaians in the U.S. There are some who are not registered or, let's say, legal residents there. Now, a Trump presidency is promising to deal with all those immigrants there. Don't forget, a lot of Ghanaians or families here also get a lot of remittance from their brothers in the U.S. So if Trump is able to implement this policy that he's pushing, that could have impact on the incomes of Ghanaians who are here in terms of drawing funding from these relatives who are there in New York or whichever state you might want to think about. But again, the uncertainty alone and its impact, ripple impact on other markets in the world, the fact that we have our bonds and all those things, that is where we could see that impact hitting the Ghanaian market and even the economy.
You think he could cut aid to Ghana and other African countries?
You could see maybe reviewing their aid because his argument is that America cannot go ahead dashing free things to anybody.
Okay.
If America is part of an organization, others should also contribute to it.
All right.
So you could see a Trump presidency where more of being careful about how aid is granted or support is granted to other African countries, including Ghana, where for the Democrat Hillary win, we know that she majority would push ahead with existing policies of Obama. So there wouldn't be any drastic change in terms of their support for Ghana, grants for Ghana, and all those
so
things.
Sure that she will pursue, direction of Obama?
Because if you follow from her engagement with several media and engagement, and also from people who are close to her, what we get is that apart from few trade agreements that might be tweaked a little bit, she might follow majority of the programs that was being pushed by Obama, which has also been influenced by the policy stance of the Democratic Party. So for a lot of people and for a lot of Ghanaians who deal with that economy, even in terms of businesses and all those things, you are sure that it will be business as usual. And that certainty alone has some positive impact on our bonds that are traded across the international market, as well as the Euro bonds. But the uncertainty that would characterize a Trump presidency, that's where the concern is. His stance on immigration, and that would impact on some Ghanaians who are in the U.S. who bring down money here to Ghana for their relatives as well, if he's able to go ahead with that.
You think we should expect a spontaneous reaction to the stock market in the event of any...
In Ghana, it might take a while. There won't be any immediate impact. Obviously, just like what happened in Brexit, there'll be, if a Trump wins, there'll be some rippling effect on the market. It will go down, but later it will pick up. But for Ghanaians, the concern would be its possible impact on our bonds that are traded on these markets, if people would then want to take their monies out of these bonds and put in what they'll call a safe haven, maybe like gold. That is where the concern will be, and that is how those impacts will trickle down to Ghana, because if our bonds are not performing well and people are checking out of it or moving out of it, that will have impact on our bonds and even on the economy as a whole.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
Let's wait and see.
Let's see who will have the last
at
laugh at the end of polls in US today. Will it be Hillary,
time, right?
yeah, or a Trump?
I would want to keep my word. I don't want to stick my neck out on this.
So they say it's too close to call, but I wish for Hillary win.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, George, for your time. That's George Wiafe analyzing the Trump-Hillary presidency at the end of the day when Americans finish casting their votes and when all the votes are counted. You're still on the marketplace, and this will be the end of the show for today. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And do join me again same time tomorrow on the same platform when we bring you other stories, other developments in the world of business. Meantime, you can always stay interactive with us by tweeting at Joy Business GH and on Facebook, Joy Business is our page. For more business news, log on to myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Have a good afternoon.